I am taking the funk trunk out on the road this summer. Got some live gigs booked, and I have nothing prepared, so I should probably start working on a set. These shows are going to be outdoors, mostly in front of people who have never heard of me, and probably have never heard of a modular synthesizer before, so I want to give people like a good introduction. Outdoor shows during the day, hot summer days, crowds of people who don't know who I am, and hopefully will become new fans. So that's the goal. So I'm going to start things off simple and start making some drum sounds. So I'm going to create drum sounds with my modular system and record them into this 404 sampler so that I can program patterns to play off of here. And that way I don't have to leave drum patches set up on my modular system. That frees up, patches to use as actual synth voices. All right, I have a kick drum patch going now. I just have a clock pulse going into this clock distributor here. And then that's sending a trigger into maths, which is creating the envelope for the kick. So this controls the attack of it, basically. So I've got that set as fast as it'll go. And then this is the decay. And I want this to be a pretty short, sharp kick drum, so that if I have it going pretty fast like that, the sound is going to resolve before the next time it hits. So nice short, sharp kick drum there. And basically I'm just sending a triangle signal out of this Earthquaker wave transformer into the Timbral Sculptor. This is a filter / VCA / overdrive thing. I made a video about that that goes into detail about how it works. And so this envelope from maths is controlling the filter frequency and the VCA. Yeah, that's about all there is to that. So I'm going to sample this and then I'll make some kind of a snare. Okay, so I made a clap. This is pretty cool. That thing right there is a radio, and I have it tuned to a dead channel. Like if I open the envelope all the way up, you can hear that it's a dead radio channel. Just because it has that envelope, and because of the processing happening on the filter VCA, it gives it, a really short attack and decay, and makes it sound like hands clapping. I have this module called Pixie, and this is a clone of a module by Mutable Instruments called Plaits, or Plats, however you say it. And this thing has some built-in drum sounds. This voice is called filtered noise, but I think this could be a useful kick drum. Sounds like it kind of sounds like an acoustic, like a drum kit, like an actual drum. Now this one is actually says kick, so this is actually a kick drum preset. All right, up next, they got a snare in here. And the last one is a hi-hat. That should come pretty handy. I don't have one of those yet. If I just open that up and give it a long decay, then it becomes a cymbal. All right, so now I've got this sampler all filled up with drum samples. Before I start doing synth patches, maybe I do a bank of samples of like effects that I can make with the modular synth stuff. You know, like rises and crashes, weird warpy sound effects, you know, like the kind of special, like super specific specialty patches that sound neat and are really cool to like add some flavor to something, like ear candy stuff. But typically those like really complex and weird patches use a bunch of modules at once, lots of patch cables, and it just takes up like too much of my rack to have anything left to make actual synth voices with. So I think it's cool to like make some effects, sample those, and then tear those patches out so I can patch other stuff. Maybe one of these days I'll have a rack big enough to have everything going live all at once, like drums and effects and synth voices, but I'm not there yet. So maybe these shows will lead to bigger shows where I make enough money to get a huge rack. Everybody loves a huge rack. But I got a little baby rack, sort of. Well, like medium. Look, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I need to be mindful and economical about my use of the modules that I have. All right, check this out. That's pretty cool. That's called a bouncing ball patch, because it's like the longer it goes on, the faster it's like whoop, whoop, whoop. Here, let's do it. I can't keep up. A better illustration would be to just show you the patch. Watch this light right here. That's the envelope. So, all right, let me tell you what's going on here. And you'll understand why I need to like record this and then tear out the patch and do something else, because I'm using a bunch of modules for this. So the trigger goes here into this mult, right? So this multiplies the trigger. I'm sending one trigger into maths and then the other trigger into this LFO to reset it. We'll come back to the LFO. So the trigger goes into maths, and then it has a long decay, like instant attack, long decay envelope off of that trigger there. That's not all. That trigger there, or I'm sorry, that long decay envelope goes into this is fucking like impossible to explain. Okay, so here's a very crude illustration of the envelope. It's just starts out very high and then gradually over time the amplitude goes down, right? So what that means for this patch is it's being sent into the decay for what's basically an LFO. So like if I press this button, it turns on an LFO, right? But I'm not pressing the button to turn on the LFO for this patch. What I'm doing is sending this end of rise output from channel 1 into the cycle CV input for channel 4. That means that when the wave, or when the CV finishes rising, which in this case is instant because it's the shortest attack that I can possibly have, that it has ended rising. Here, let me draw something else. Now, if I had a slower attack, then it would take longer for the amplitude to rise. And the end of rise CV would not output anything until it reached this peak. The peak here is where the end of rise occurs. That's when it stops rising and starts falling, right? So on maths, on channel 1, there's this end of rise CV output, and that is sending a gate signal. Watch. Okay, so keep an eye on this light here. This is the end of light CV. I'm sending a trigger to maths now. And you'll see it's lit up the whole time now. So basically, the entire time that envelope is falling, that end of rise CV output is going. And so that gate from end of rise is going into the cycle CV for channel 4, which operates the same way as if I had just pressed this button. Okay, so that's part 1, I guess. Part 2 that makes this interesting is the attenuated output from channel 1, which means that CV signal where it's this is the envelope that's coming out of channel 1. I'm sending it out of the attenuated output, which means I have the amplitude for that envelope turned pretty low, and I'm sending it into, or I have it patched into the fall CV for channel 4. So as this envelope, as the amplitude of the envelope, or I should say, as the amplitude of the CV is falling because of the envelope, it is shortening the fall of channel 4, which means it's shortening the cycle of the LFO. LFO stands for low frequency oscillator. So it's cycling. It's creating. Okay, I can illustrate this just within the module itself. So I'm turning the cycle on, and let's simplify this a bit. So as I turn the fall, the fall is basically the decay for the envelope. But right now it's when it's cycling, it's creating an LFO. So this makes it more of like a triangle. I'm overcomplicating this. Let me just show you real quick. Short fall, long fall, medium fall. So when this is going to the fall CV input for channel 4, it starts long and then shortens it up as that amplitude drops. So let's listen to it again. This is the patch as it's set up without me messing with it. There's part 2 of the patch. There's more. And also sending an LFO to the pitch of my oscillator. So as that bouncing ball envelope is doing its thing, the pitch of the oscillator is also changing. And I'm sending the inverted LFO to the wave shape of the oscillator. So as the pitch is rising, the shape of the wave is also changing. And by the way, it took way less time to build this patch than it does to explain it. Like I've done patches like this a bunch of times, so it doesn't really take me a long time to set it up, but explaining how it's going is like, you know, it's like trying to translate an alien language. It's like I can read the language and understand it, but then translating it into English is like, well, hopefully any of that makes sense. So after all that happens, then here, let me zoom out a little bit. After all that happens, then it goes into the filter VCA, and then from there into Mimeophon. I've done videos on both the Timbral Sculptor and the Mimeophon if you want to check out what those do. This is basically delay reverb kind of deal. So that's just one effect. I feel like that's probably it for today. So I have a lot more stuff to do, but I'm going to record some samples of this patch and then, you know, tomorrow tear it down and start building some other weird stuff to sample. Where I'm headed with this is I want to make something melodic with summer vibes. You know, like the first gig I'm playing is at a tiki bar. So, you know, Hawaiian shirt style kind of deal, chilling outside on a patio. So I want some like laid back kind of like effortless groove things going on. So I'm thinking like melodic, exotic kind of stuff, but nothing too try hard or too crazy. You know, like this isn't Berlin techno bunker kind of music that I'm going for. It's going to be more, you know, warm and sunny and light kind of deal. So we'll see how all that develops. And yeah, I got a few weeks to prepare, so it'll be fun.